Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you joining us from across East Asia and Pacific region and beyond. Thank you for joining us for See the Shift, a conversation on the trends and opportunities shaping the green and digital transition for girls and boys. I'm Miriana Unchanin, adolescent skills consultant at UNICEF Yapro here in Bangkok, and I'm so excited to be your moderator for today. So, why are we here? Very good question, right? The green and digital transitions are reshaping everything: how we live, how we learn, and how we work. But we also know that they are not reaching everyone equally. Across our region, we have more than 285 million adolescent girls and boys, a generation full of potential, and yet far too many of them are still being left behind. Right now, one in three girls and young women aged 15 to 24 are not in education, employment, or training, or as we call them as needs. And that's nearly three times the rate of their male peers. So when we add societal gender norms, digital exclusion, unpaid care responsibilities, and limited access to future ready skills, the picture becomes even more unequal. At UNICEF IAPRO, when we talk about skilled, employed, and empowered, we're talking about ensuring that every young person, every girl, possess the right tools, choices, and voice to thrive. And girls themselves have already made it perfectly clear through the Girls Go Green joint recommendations, co created by adolescent girls from across Asia and the Pacific. They want equal access to green and digital skills, a meaningful role in shaping the decisions that affect them, not just a seat at the table, but a say in how that table is built, and systems that don't just include them, but truly work with and for them in transformative ways. So if you'd like to dive deeper into these insights, the links to Skilled, Employed, and Empowered, or as we call it, a C, and the Girls Go Green joint recommendations are available in the chat. So, to help us explore these shifts and how it looks like in action, I'm joined by three incredible women who are already leading the way by translating ideas into impact across tech, sustainability, and meaningful youth participation. First, we have Ha Tu Tram, a passionate young changemaker from Vietnam and a member of our Young People's Action Team. Trang works closely with ethnic minority youth and is a powerful voice for gender transformative skills building, digital empowerment, and youth led climate action. Next, we have Asian Malin, a sustainability and ESG recruitment consultant with Acre Asia Pacific. Aishan has worked across Europe and Asia, helping companies find the leadership needed to drive real environmental and social change. And last, we have Mahima Rajangam Natarajan, co-founder and chief marketing officer of Food, a climate tech startup tackling food waste by connecting consumers with surplus food from hotels and supermarkets. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So we all know that AI is reshaping the world, from how we learn and work to how we solve problems and how we connect with one another. But here's the big question: is AI expanding access and opportunities to all, or is it reinforcing the gaps that already exist? So my first question goes to you, Tram. You've been working closely with girls and young people in underserved communities. From your experience, how is AI impacting their access to education, skills, and future opportunities? Are we building systems to truly include them, or are we leaving them behind once again? Trang, over to you.
Thank you, Jana, and thank you for the question. So, from what I've seen working with girls in remote and ethnic minorities communities in Vietnam, especially in rural provinces like Điện Biên or Sơn La, AI has the potential to either be a bridge or a barrier. And right now, for me, I think it's still learning both ways for us. So, on one hand, AI tools has made it easier for girls in rural areas to access information and learning resources. For example, in Điện Biên, girls who face challenges like long distances to school, they are very far away from uh, their their school, or they have limited transportation. Ideally, AI itself could make these challenges more easier for them. They can make education more flexible and more personalized through apps that support their local language translation or provide self-paced learning for them. However, I also seen a growing trend of national agenda in Vietnam. Like there are programs and contests encouraging girls and students to explore AI and apply it in their learning to improve their employability. However, these benefits are not reaching everyone equally, and I see that there are three main issues happening. So the first thing is the access gap, like the tangible thing and also the intangible thing. For example, like the facilities, the devices. Not all girls in rural Vietnam have smartphones or internets, and also we have not yet provide all the girls with sufficient digital skills needed to use AI tools effectively. The second issue is the gender gap. For the East Asia Pacific region, as highlighted in a report by UNICEF Year Pro in 2024, it is called the Future Ready report, and I think you can also find it in our documents later on. Girls continue to face gender-specific barriers, like including social expectations and cultural norms that discourage them from pursuing technology. And in rural Vietnam, girls, the fields like STEM fields are actually very far away from them. They don't really heard about it or actually consider them for a major in higher studies. And even when they are studying STEM fields and working in STEM fields, they also often checked into lower paid or less secure jobs and remain underrepresented in STEM fields. And that also leads to my third gaps that I observed, that is the representation gap. In Vietnam, we can see that there are some progress, more efforts have been made to include disaggregated data on rural girls and better understanding their learning environments, but this is still slow and not yet a standard practice. So in conclusion, I think that there are positive signs. The system is being built very positively towards girls, but right now I think that we are still built too often around girls and not with them. They're not yet had the chance to actively contribute it effectively. So yeah, I think that is my answer for your question, Jenna.
Thank you so much, Trang. That was definitely both honest and eye-opening. What stood out for me is definitely the tension you describe. AI has that real potential to expand access and flexibility for girls, particularly in rural communities. But the reality on the ground is that many of them are being left out because of the gaps that you've perfectly highlighted. So now, and also definitely that the systems are often built around girls, but not with them. Very beautifully put. Aishan, so moving on to you. You've worked with companies across the sustainability and ESG space. Are they genuinely preparing girls and young people for the shifts driven by AI and the green transition, or are we still training for yesterday's jobs and not tomorrow's opportunities? Aishan, over to
Thanks,
you.
Yana. Really good question. From what I've seen across the sustainability ecosystem, we're all just starting to recognize the scale that AI and the green transition are bringing. When it comes to preparing girls and young people, particularly those from underserved communities, we're still quite far behind where we need to be. Many systems are equipping young people for a job market that is rapidly evolving, while AI and the green economy are rapidly creating new opportunities. Access to those skills, networks, and decision-making spaces that really matter remain deeply unequal. Girls especially continue to face compounding barriers, just like Trang mentioned, whether it's digital exclusion, unpaid care burdens, or the lack of gender transformative skilling pathways. As the data shows, only a fraction of green skills programs even acknowledges gender pay gaps, let alone tackle them. It should also be noted that AI is a disruptor and it's a fairly new topic. This means that whilst organizations are looking for AI and green skills in candidates now, they may not necessarily be focusing on this in 5, 10, 20 years' time. So that is something to keep in mind. What does give me hope for the future is the momentum that we're seeing from young people themselves. Like with the Girls Go Green joint recommendations, they're not waiting to be invited in, they're shaping what inclusive and future-ready systems should look like. The challenge now is whether governments, companies, institutions will step up fast enough to match their ambition and help build a future that doesn't just include girls and young people, but is actually shaped by them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aishan. You really built on trans points powerfully and raised some critical challenges as well. I think what struck me the most was your point about momentum, that young people, and we do see it on our day to day work here at UNICEF, are already shaping the future. But the question is whether institutions will rise to meet them where they are. And that brings us to someone who can shed light onto this. So, Mahima, over to you. You've built a tech solution for a climate challenge, but we know that not every girl has the chance to be part of these kinds of spaces. So, from your perspective, how do we ensure that AI and digital innovation doesn't just benefit those who are already in the room per se, but actually create opportunities for girls and marginalized youth? Maima, over to you.
Thank you, Yana, for the question. And thank you, Trang and Aishin, for your powerful insights. From my experience building Gindi, I've seen that we don't always need to reinvent entire systems to create real access for girls and young people who are often left out. Sometimes it's about finding the doors that already exist and opening them wider. So, take digital platforms, for example. At Yindi, we use a simple mobile app to connect people with surplus food. But the tech itself isn't what's really revolutionary here. It's about how we bring people into it together. We work with businesses that are already there, food that would otherwise go to waste, and customers who are already online. So we don't often realize that innovation is in connecting the dots. And that same idea can actually work for inclusion and skill building too. So, one way how I see is by using the tools the girls already engage with, mobile apps, social media, messaging platforms, to build digital confidence and curiosity. And now, with AI tools like language support and learning assistants becoming more and more accessible, we have even more ways to make learning more flexible, relevant, and localized. It's about meeting girls where they are, not really waiting for them to catch up. So, another way is through real world, low barrier opportunities. For example, at Yindi, we offer internships in data, tech marketing, and operations. The chance to gain transferable, future ready skills, including exposure to AI driven tools we use in areas like inventory management and analytics. So they don't really have to call themselves techies to contribute to sustainability in our case. They just need a starting point and the right support to grow. But access isn't everything. We all know that. So when we highlight youth led initiatives, local champions, and young women leading in climate and tech, we send a very clear signal that they belong, not someday, but right now. So, in my opinion, that actually starts by reframing what leadership in tech looks like. Innovation isn't always coding. Some people always think that. It's empathy, it's storytelling, it's design, and it's also community knowledge. I've actually met girls who are natural change makers, but they don't always see themselves reflected in the traditional definition of tech. And I think that's what we need to change. We don't have to necessarily wait for big systems to change. We can already use existing platforms, partnerships, and everyday tools to help girls already build real skills, grow their confidence, and unlock real opportunities. So this is my take on it.
Thank you so much, Mahima. That was such a strong reminder that access doesn't always require reinvention or reinventing the wheel, but most of the time it really takes genuine intention from the stakeholders that are involved, whether it's on using everyday tools that girls already engage with, as you've mentioned, or simply creating entry points like internships and mentorship support that your work shows innovation can start small, but can mean a lot. So, building on that, let's shift gears now and talk about the green transition. It's often described as a once in a generation opportunity, one that could create millions and millions of new jobs across the region. But just like with AI, the benefits aren't reaching everyone equally. Girls and young people, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, still face structural barriers that keep them on the sidelines. So, Trang, turning it back to you, from your work with underserved communities in Vietnam, what does the green transition look like from their point of view? Do girls see green skills as something real, tangible, relevant, or is it still distant or out of reach? Trang, over to you.
Thank you, Jenna, for the question. So it is a very good question. And Also very interesting for me to hear. So from experience working with youth in rural areas, especially with girls in provinces from my hometown like Điện Biên, the transition is becoming more real and it is receiving more practical exposure. So I want to zoom into my case a little bit. This is the story of the community that I've been part of, and I believe it is also true for some other regions in East Asia and Pacific. In my province, some girls don't know about the green transition or what it actually includes. They might have heard about it. They heard the term green, but they don't know about it, but they're already practicing parts of it in their daily lives. So, for example, they have already helped their families with using the compost, use less, limit their plastic waste, or farm in ways that protect the environment. But they just don't identify these actions as green. And when I told them that, oh, you are actually having some initial green skills, they are very surprised. And then they ask like, so what's next? Because that is also a question that I asked too. Because if we as girls are already doing some of the work, we are actually learning some part of it, but the world around us, such as our education, training, or our job prospects, or our access to green jobs doesn't really change, then why is it called a green transition, or why should I care? So to come back to your question, what does the green transition look like from their point of view? I think for many it's still vague. They've heard about the term, they don't know what they really mean. But when they learn about it, it does become clearer, and we are actually some of the most fast adaptable generation right now, right? So from the story I tell, I think that the way to empower girls to realize that the green transition is around them and that we are the main actors in this transition is to first involve them more firm in co-creating the pathway. For example, like let green skills curricular be co-designed by girls with girls and not just for girls. And as a youth, I say that we are completely capable of helping shape what green education looks like, and then it'll become more relevant to our realities, especially in rural settings. And secondly, I think that we also need to invest in green learning and career paths that fit girls' needs to what Mahima have said, to have paid internships or mentorship or career guidance to help girls turn their existing skills into decent work, which is need like a stepping stone. So to conclude that, I do think that we are seeing a shift. And in Vietnam, there are more and more youth programs that are training young people, including girls, and more girls are learning about the green transition and joining green innovation challenges and shaping the local solutions. So yes, this LinkedIn Live's name, See the Shift, is actually very exciting and true to the scene here in northern Vietnam. And although there is still a lot of work to be pushed, I think it is a very exciting phase for us girls in Vietnam. Thank you. Next to you, Jana.
Thank you so much, Chang. That was such a powerful reflection. And I love how you brought it back to the lived reality of the girls in your community, that they're already doing the work. It's just that they don't call it green skills per se. And the question that you've asked on why should I care if nothing around me changes, that really resonates and stays with me, because it reminds us that it's not enough to talk about the transitions. We actually need to make sure that those transitions actually mean something for the girls where they are. So, Aishan, let's come to you. From your vantage point, are private sector actors truly shifting toward inclusive green forces, or are we still seeing sustainability roles filled through the same narrow pipelines? What needs to change to bring in more young women from diverse backgrounds?
Thanks, Jana. That's a really crucial question. And the short answer is progress is happening, but it's often uneven and not the key priority. Many countries globally have actually legally mandated diversity, equity, and inclusion laws for hiring, meaning that certain quotas need to be met in order for the business to operate. But this is still not the case in many countries, which definitely needs to change. From my vantage point, many private sector actors are vocal about sustainability and diversity, but when it comes to actually building truly inclusive green workforces, we're still seeing the same narrow pipelines dominate. A key reason for this is just given the urgency of the climate crisis and current economic challenges, private sectors are requiring real technical expertise and often do not have the time or resources to adequately train someone for this job or the specific role that they're looking for. there is a significant lack of real technical sustainability expertise globally, which is making barriers to entry tough in the interim, but it does present longer term opportunities. One positive piece of news is that at COP16, we saw biodiversity. The world truly saw how adopting indigenous practices can enhance and restore biodiversity globally and ensure they had a seat at the and implementation and benefit sharing. Overall, sustainability roles, especially those linked to the green transition, innovation, and AI, are still often filled through traditional networks that favor those with specific educational or socioeconomic backgrounds. That really leaves young women, particularly from marginalized communities, locked out of the very sectors that are shaping our future. To change this, we need companies to move beyond performative commitments and start embedding equity into the very design of their workforce strategy. That means, firstly, investing in gender-responsive skilling programs in partnership with education providers and community organizations. Secondly, opening up entry points through paid internships, apprenticeships, and mentorships that actively target underrepresented groups and are not just filled through direct networks. Thirdly, reforming hiring practices, as I mentioned earlier, to value diverse lived experience and not just academic pedigree, and making this a global standard. And crucially and lastly, elevating young women into decision-making roles, not just entry-level positions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aishan. That's incredibly honest and so needed. There's a lot of talk right now about diversity, about sustainability. But what you reminded us just now is that unless equity is baked into how workforces are built, we're going to keep seeing the same outcomes again and again. I really appreciated also what you said about shifting hiring practices, valuing lived experiences and not just academic credentials. And yes, we need to do think beyond entry level roles, but actually having more young women deserve to be shaping the future and not just participating in it in leadership roles. So, Mayama, given that you're also in a leadership role, let's go back to your journey. What were some of the biggest gaps and challenges you faced as a young woman in climate tech? And what kind of support would have made that path a little bit or relatively easier, not just for you, but for girls who want to follow a similar path? Over to you, Mayama.
Yeah. Thank you, Yana, for the question. I think the challenges girls might face in this here might also vary depending on the communities that we come from. So I'm from India, and the default path in India is pretty clear. You either become a doctor or an engineer. And I did become an engineer and then went on to do my MBA, which for some reason stereotypically is the next logical step for the people in our country. So sustainability was never a part of that journey. We weren't talking about environment or green jobs. It was all about competition, grades, and career security. So it's only much later that I discovered my purpose in climate impact, not because it was taught or encouraged, but just because I stumbled into it. I mean, it's not the proudest of stories, but that's the reality. So even now, in many parts of Asia, climate careers are still seen as something extra, not something that's essential. So when someone chooses a different path, it's often also misunderstood. So before Yindi, I worked in larger organizations, stable jobs, clearer roles. So when I started Yindi, some of my ex-colleagues were honestly shocked, even though I was seen as a good performer. Many didn't believe I'd go on to build something meaningful on my own. I couldn't really tell if it was the fact that I was young or a woman, or simply that climate work didn't really feel big enough for the people to take it seriously. So it was really hard for them to accept that the girl who sat beside them yesterday could actually take on something that tries to fix a global issue. And that's the thing, right? Climate action always sounds huge, but most of the real work starts small. I felt the gap between what I was building and what people expected of me, and I carried that weight quietly with determination. I didn't really try to explain myself to everyone. I just focused on proving that it mattered. But it was also lonely. As a young woman in climate tech, I often didn't have people around me who could really relate to what I was doing. Leaving a high paying job to do something that felt risky but meaningful, some really thought it was idealistic and others just didn't understand. And that's exactly why we need to build a better path forward for girls. Girls everywhere are capable of solving real problems, But without visible role models, early exposure, and real support, they may never get the chance to try. And if climate action always looks like scientists in labs or policymakers in suits, most young women will assume that it's not for them. So it's not enough to talk about opportunity. We have to really build the systems that support it. Mentorship, funding, hands on experience, not as extras, but really as essentials, I would say. Because the truth is, I don't think girls are really waiting for permission. They are already out there creating, organizing, and solving, but often with no spotlight. The question isn't whether girls are ready for the green transition, it's whether the system is ready to recognize what they're already doing. So, this is more of my personal story on the challenges.
Thank you very much, Mahima. And that really brought everything full circle. What you said, it's not about whether girls are ready, it's about whether we are ready to recognize what they're already doing. And that sums it perfectly clear. So across all the three insights that we've heard, the message is clear. Girls and young people are not waiting. They are already leading. The shift is happening, and we all need to catch up. So before we wrap up, let's do a quick lightning round to close us with energy and good intention. So I'll ask each of you to finish the sentence with one bold thought. To truly see the shift for girls and young people in the green and digital transition, we must. So let's go with Trang, then Aishan, then Mahima. Trang, over to you.
Okay, so I'm the first one. I will try to make it short, but to truly see the shift for girls and young people in the green and digital transition, I think we have to start recognizing them as central to the solutions. Girls, especially those in rural areas, are already active in raising their voices, but those without real action to support their skills, education, or leadership, those efforts often go unseen. And as a girl from rural Vietnam, I think that I am just a living proof that I am here to be given the chance to speak up, to be heard, and contribute to shaping the solutions. And we must ensure that all young people, girls and boys, regardless of our backgrounds or location, have the same opportunity to do this. Next to Aishan.
Thanks, Trang. To truly see the shift for girls and young people in the green and digital transition, we must move beyond diversity and inclusion as a box tick and build systems that are equitable, gender transformative, and youth-led from the ground up. We must give young people a seat at the table and truly recognize the wealth of knowledge that can be brought from their perspective. Over to you, Mahima.
Lovely, Trang and Aishan. So, my take, I think it also kind of summarizes what I spoke earlier. To truly see the shift for girls and young people in the green and digital transition, we must stop underestimating them. Girls don't really need saving, they need backing. They're already building solutions, challenging norms, and leading quietly. The shift happens when we stop asking if they are ready and start asking if our systems are really ready for them.
Thank you so much to our incredible speakers, Trang, Aishan, and Mahima, and to all of you who joined us today. So here's what we've heard loud and clear. If we truly want to see the shift, we need to do more than give girls and young people new skills, but actually we need to break the barriers that keep them from using those skills to lead and thrive. May it be on what they face on a day-to-day basis, on the people they interact, whether it's on AI, green jobs, or any space shaping their future. Girls and young people need more than a seat at the table. They need the power to help design it. So if you want to explore more, please check the links in the chat for the Girls Go Green joint recommendations and the Skilled Employed Empowered vision of UNICEF EAPRO. Also, we have another exciting conversation coming up for World Youth Skills Day on the 15th of July, hosted by UNICEF, ILO, UN Women, and Young People. We'll drop the registration link in the chat and we'd love to see you there. So thank you again for being part of today's conversation. Let's keep working to ensure that every girl and every young person is skilled, employed, and empowered. And until next time, let's continue working together to see the shift. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.